Welcome friends to stage 2 of the restoration of an Italian 6-hour dialed lantern clock. I'd previously covered stage 1 in another narrated PowerPoint presentation, and this earlier stage covered the construction of the time train for this little clock, and I will give you a link to go back and to review that before we carry on to stage 2, if that's what you'd like to do. In this particular stage, I have to start from scratch, design and construct an entire striking train in accordance with the techniques and the design contemporary to the clock, made in around 1700. With a 6-hour dial, these clocks are quite unique, and it will be quite a unique construction. When I launched stage 1 through YouTube videos, I received a comment back asking for a count of the wheels in the time train, and on this page you can see a complete wheel train layout and count for both time train and the striking train. Of note is the fact that I've got both great wheels rotating once every 2 hours in both time and strike trains. This allows the weights that are driving these trains to fall at the same rate. Important when it comes to having a clock that only needs to be wound once every 12 hours. I'd mentioned before that when I'm restoring a clock, particularly of this age, I'm always using old metal, old wheels, old pinions that I've recovered from old contemporary movements. I've never yet been unable to match a train that I want to some of the wheels and pinions I can find in amongst all of these spares. You can see I've got old iron, old brass, old wheels, old arbors and pinions, awaiting selection and reuse, recycling, so that the metal will be of the same colour, particularly for the brass, and same age. In accordance with the wheel count shown previously, I've selected old wheels and pinions to match the train count, and I have mounted them onto arbors or reused the old arbors and pinions and laid them out using my depthing tool into the plates of my old clock. And here you can see the striking train all laid out, ready for further development. An extension of the striking great wheel arbor through the rear plate is squared off to carry a small pinion of report. This pinion of report will drive the gear behind the count wheel or locking plate, which will then control the number of strikes when the system is operating. In this slide you can see the pinion of report meshing with the wheel that will be behind the count wheel or locking plate. And also on the right hand side is a blank locking plate ready to be indexed and cut with the necessary slots for the various hours. Here's the locking plate with a little bit of decoration and the outer engraved lines as guides for the depth of the slots, which are now to be cut and shown on the right hand side. You'll note that it's been cut in Italian alla romana striking, which is 1:6, and on this case twice, so that there will be a repeat of the strike. The control of the striking system is done with a single arbor but with multiple detents. And here we can see one of the detents going up to the fly and another at the back going around to the count wheel. Others in there include a nag's head for the release of the strike, and these will be shown in greater detail in the next couple of slides. The nag's head lifting lever operates from pins inserted into the great wheel of the time train. Here in this photo you can see two pins at the bottom of the great wheel, and they will have opposite pins at the top of the wheel because this wheel rotates once every 2 hours, so it releases hourly at each half revolution. There are two pins spaced about 3 minutes apart so that the lifting lever is lifted by the first pin and the nag's head drops immediately behind it, ready for the second and repeat of the hour only 3 minutes after. Hence the two pins very closely located on the wheel. The single arbor control of the striking is quite complicated in that it has to do 4 things. You can have a count wheel follower, an overlift lever, a fly lock, and a release lever with the nag's head. Getting these all into exactly the right position at the right time is quite a job, but ultimately, when complete, it is quite nice to watch in operation, especially the nag's head, which, because we have no warning in this strike system, has to drop down behind the lifting pin, ready for the release again by another lifting pin only 3 or 4 minutes apart, which is the repeat of the strike on the hour. Only the nag's head is able to flick back behind one pin, ready for the next pin in such a short time. Having completed the construction of the control of the striking system, we now move on to the hammer, which will be activated by the strike lever system to hit the bell. And here we have a vertical post with the hammer on top, and at the bottom we have the lever which will be activated by the striking system. Here is the hammer post in position, and at the bottom you can see on the right another little lever system mounted into a vertically slotted post, the lever extending through into the pins on the hammer lifting wheel, the great wheel of the striking train, and that is counterbalanced by a return spring to give the hammer enough power to strike the bell. To power the striking train, we need to create the rope drive, which will operate against the great wheel spokes for the striking train. And here are the components that I've made ready for construction. A click plate attached to one cheek of the rope drive, the pulley wheel, and then the other cheek ready to be mounted on once the pins have been inserted into the core of the rope pulley. You can see the spikes that I've inserted into the brass core, which will grip the rope and apply the drive to the great wheel via the click work. Here is the completed rope drive with click mounted on the arbor, and now all in position, ready to take the rope and drive the striking mechanism. The great wheel on the strike train is now complete, and here it is refitted back into the movement with a striking train complete. Project complete from a frame only start to a complete finished operating clock with both time and strike trains made as true replicas of an original clock of this period. Wow, what a job, what a project. Very, very satisfying to be able to bring back to life a clock frame with the original components and then construct a movement totally in keeping with a clock of this type and this period. 11 months work, but oh so satisfying. Such a humble little clock as this 6-hour Italian clock, but oh so interesting and rare. Here you can see my clock on the left compared to another almost identical clock from Toscana in Italy, again with a 6-hour dial. Within my collection I have this beautiful Italian lantern clock on the left. The decoration and the design of this beautiful clock are far, far greater than the little monastic on the right. The one on the left would have been custom made to the requirements of a nobleman in Italy. The other for the simplicity and requirements of a monastery, simply to keep hours for their prayers. A vast difference in the decoration, but the mechanisms remain very, very similar. A basic oak bracket to hang the beautiful little monastic clock from the wall. A beautiful project which used most of my skills in being able to restore what could be considered to be a lost cause and bring it back to life. That completes this project. I hope you enjoyed it, and I trust it inspires you to carry on with your hobby and perhaps even restore such a clock as this. Thank you. Goodbye.